How's everyone doing today? Good? Real good. I promise to keep this brief. I know I'm the only thing between you and the free drinks. Although if I was smart, I'd have you drink first, and then you could come sit, and this might make more sense. But I'll just proceed. My name's John Wheeler. I'm Vice President of Strategy and Emerging Technologies for SBI Global. And I'm going to speak today briefly about some of the trials and tribulations that we've seen as far as Flash to HTML5 is concerned. Those of us who've been in the business long enough recognize the different signals for Flash. And back when, it was just enough to worry about what version of Flash you had for your product. Not so much will Flash even work, because for the longest, Flash was one of the most pervasive delivery mechanisms for media in the world. And if we just step back a minute and take a little bit of history as far as how did we get to the issues we have right now, in the early days of computing, some smart guys figured out ways to run graphics and media programs within the newfangled browsers that they weren't designed to do. And the browser companies kind of supported this, and they encouraged these outside organizations to go ahead and develop what became known as plugins, because it gave their particular browser more sachet and actually more traction within the industry. The more plugins they had, and the more you could do within their browser. And once again, some historical stuff for those of us who remember things. Some of the more popular ones were made by companies like Asymmetrics, Macromedia, and there's some old logos there. And basically, what they did in the beginning was they supported the streaming of complicated graphics and audio that heretofore could only be done on a CD. And the way they did that was simple. They just chopped up these graphics into small packets and sent it to the plugin, which assembled the graphic back into its original form. What happened was kind of like a runaway train. The packages, these plugins, quickly improved to the point where they actually became almost a programming language which ran within the browser. Okay? And so the plugin actually was performing interpretive work within the browser, and that caused some issues. It improved the performance of these applications and the graphics tremendously. It opened up a lot of interactivity between the browser, the computer that the browser is running on, and actually even the computer which is sending that information to the browser. And it gave rise to a lot of the technologies we use today, whether it's streaming video, whether it's interactivities, things of that nature. As my slide here says, unfortunately, that was a bit of a runaway train. As the number of browsers proliferated, as well as the capabilities of the various plugins, the plugins became a source of security concerns. They became places where malicious attacks could happen and still do. And they became CPU and memory hogs on the PCs themselves. Okay? And they really started demanding more and more power to run these very robust applications within a browser on a PC. So, change is the only constant. There are different types of Flash. Formerly the most popular media delivery platform on the web or otherwise. Before I was on the supplier side working for SBI, I actually worked for Elsevier for 8 years, where I was the director of multimedia development for that organization. And I can't tell you how many times I sat in front of editorial groups and author groups and told them not to worry, because as long as we produced our product in Flash, that it would be future-proof, and we could use it forever and ever and ever, and on and on and on. Those folks are looking for me to this day. What happened in early 2010 and on into 2011, there were a number of announcements and changes in the computing industry that really foretold a change in how we're going to be handling rich content and media applications, and actually what's going to happen to Flash in general. I like to say on this one that it's very rare in a fight that the first punch thrown is a knockout blow. And while we didn't know it at the time, the fact that Apple refused to embrace plugins and Flash in particular on the iPad was really a telling thing for the future, okay? And I first kind of dismissed it as kind of an upstaging of Apple versus Adobe and who was going to control that desktop space. but it really came to bear. And if you've never read all of Steve Jobs' treatise on this, it's kind of interesting. In conjunction with this conference is the epub conference, and I was there, and believe me, the impact of epub and how they handle content in HTML5 is huge, and it actually provides ways to do some of the things that were being done in Flash now through HTML5 and epub. 99% of the people that I've spoken to at this conference are interested in some sort of enhanced ebook. So we're going to leverage this epub standard or some other standard in order to bring audio and video and things like that to these products running on tablets which do not support Flash. Not well known, but Microsoft has said that in Microsoft Windows 8, the tablets version of that will not support plugins. So therefore, no Flash. Now, the guys at Adobe didn't get to the position they are by not being smart and being reactive to the marketplace. And you have to understand that Adobe has made their money in producing tools, whereas the output of this tool was Flash. They really didn't make any money on Flash. They made money on the tools and the creative assets they helped develop doing that. So Adobe is, within Adobe, embracing new ways of creating content using some of the same methodologies, some of the same paradigms that people learned doing Flash, okay, in order to produce HTML5. And if you go to their website, they have a nice little statement saying, okay, Steve Jobs, you were right. We're going to go ahead and embrace HTML5 as much as we were hoping you'd embrace Flash. But this conversation today is more about the legacy content. We're speaking to organizations that have literally thousands and thousands of Flash assets that they've developed over the years. And I think I probably developed 500,000 myself. That they're looking to recover that cost on. And all of these assets, I mean, it isn't just the cost of programming them, it was the cost of developing the content, it was the cost of the authoring, it was the cost of, it sits on a platform now. It's a lot of things that means if an organization is looking to go ahead and let's say you're a textbook manufacturer and you're hoping to have your product adopted by an organization or university, but the university says everything has to be compatible with an iPad, you have to do something with all those Flash assets. And so, you know, this huge investment, both in opportunity costs as well as in real costs, has to be fixed somehow. What we hoped was that something like this would happen. Somebody would make a converter, we drop Flash in, turn a crank, and out would come HTML5. Well, it's not that good. We did a quick sampling of some of the converters that come from well-known organizations, and I'll just step through these quickly. If you look at Swiffy from Google, you can go to the Google website, you can drop your Flash object into Swiffy, and it gives you something back, okay? And the thing it gives you back is an encoded file that you can call from within your web page, but you have to have the Swiffy runtime engine as well, and you can't do anything else with this file because it's encoded. It's nothing you can do with this. And these are just some of the screens. Wallaby from Adobe. Once again, you can take your Flash files, you can put them into Wallaby and work on Wallaby. And basically, the output is a combination of HTML5, SVGs, and CSS, but it's primarily intended as a starting point. Because when you look at what Wallaby gives you back, a lot of the interactivity that you were hoping to have or that you use Flash for has been stripped out, and that you now have to do yourself using JavaScript or some other programming language. And if you look at the disclaimer on Wallaby, you know, those last 3 bullets here, here's what doesn't work from Wallaby. Not your action script, not your movies, and not any sound. Okay? And they say themselves their design goal was not to produce a final HTML ready, but actually give you a starting point. The same thing if you've done courseware and you're using Captivate. They make a nice converter for Captivate, but once again, if you look at the very bottom there, the absence in objects that can't be supported, it can't execute JavaScript, it can't do advanced options, it can't do video, it can't zoom objects, it can't do animation, it can't do widgets, it can't do a lot of things, which is what people were using Flash for in the first place. So here's what we found in our investigations. If you've got a simple animation or a banner graphic or something like that that you want to convert, some of these will work. In some cases, they provide a starting point for your additional work, but the reality is that most of the complex Flash objects that we're looking to convert actually need some customized workflows and attention. So what about the hard stuff, okay? We found that we've had to develop a disciplined approach to looking at hotspots, to looking at the graphics, to looking at the Flash or the action script which is originally used, and then recreate those activities using a combination of HTML5 and JavaScript. So what do we have to do in total? We build a map of all the different content types, all the different interactivities. Are there data communication requirements? And when I say data communication, I mean, does your application talk to either the person's computer, or does it talk to a server? Does it report information to an LMS? We define all the graphic elements. We extract, capture, recreate. Same for the audio. If you've got hotspots or target zones, those have to be plotted out. And we create that using HTML5 and JavaScript, which we then test. For images, a lot of cases we have the FLA file, so we can pull those FLAs out, the images out. If not, we can decompile it and come up with the graphics otherwise. Interactions, hotspots, drag, feedback, all like that, it's all programmed. And what we found ourselves doing, I mean, until I have 2 minutes, so I'm going to talk really, really fast. So what we do is we take a look at the entire course in itself. Why did you create it? You know, what were the input samples? What were the specifications you used in creating it? And we identify all those that we can convert and which need to be recreated. We recreate your template using HTML5. We do asset extraction and cleanup, which means we grab the static animations if possible. We do the graphic elements. Depending on the input type, you know, some level of cleanup is necessary on those graphics. We redo all the interactivity. We integrate it back into your piece. And finally, we do QA and QC. The point I want to leave everybody with is that this isn't a step-by-step process. It's a combination of a number of processes which are put together in order to take a look at courseware or these interactivities as a whole, as opposed to them individually. So some of the bigger projects we've done have had 200 or 300 different components within them. And what we do is we look for commonalities across the components. So if your components have drag and drops, once we program that once we understand once how that's done, we can leverage that across the rest of the products. The same for pull downs, the same for fill in the blanks, the same for a lot of other things. So you need to have somebody that can look at and work with you in total. So thank you very much.